Coalwood was surrounded by forest and mountains dotted with caves and cliffs and gas wells and fire towers and abandoned mines just waiting to be discovered and rediscovered by me and the boys and girls I grew up with. Although our mothers forbade it, we also played around the railroad tracks. Every so often, somebody would come up with the idea of putting a penny on the track and getting it run over by the coal cars to make a big flat medal. We'd all do it then until we had used up our meager supply. Stifling our laughter, we'd hand the crushed coppers across the counter at the company store for candy. The clerk, having seen this many times over the years, usually accepted our tender without comment. They probably had a stack of flat pennies somewhere in the company store offices collected over the decades. For a satisfying noise, nothing beat going up on the Coalwood School bridge and throwing pop bottles into the empty coal cars rolling into the tipple. When the coal cars were full and stopped beneath the bridge, some of the braver boys would even leap into them, plunging waist deep into the loose coal. I tried it once and barely escaped when the train suddenly pulled out, bound for Ohio. I wallowed through the coal and climbed down the outside ladder of the car and jumped for it, skinning my hands, knees, and elbow on the packed coal around the track. My mother took no pity on me and scrubbed the coal dirt off me with a stiff brush and lava soap. My skin felt raw for a week. When I wasn't outside playing, I spent hours happily reading. I loved to read, probably the result of the unique education I received from the Coalwood School teachers known as the Great Six, a corruption of the phrase grades 1 through 6. For years, these same 6 teachers had seen through their classroom generations of Coalwood students. Although Mr. Likens, the Coalwood School principal, controlled the junior high school with a firm hand, the Great Six held sway in the grades below. It seemed to be very important to these teachers that I read. By the 2nd grade, I was intimately familiar with and capable of discussing in some detail Tom Sawyer and Uncle Tom's Cabin. Huckleberry Finn, they saved for me until the 3rd grade, tantalizingly holding it back as if it contained the very secrets of life. When I was finally allowed to read it, I very well knew this was no simple tale of rafting down a river, but the everlasting story of America itself, with all our glory and shame. Bookcases filled with complete sets of Tom Swift, the Bobbsey twins, the Hardy Boys, and Nancy Drew were in the grade school hallway and available to any student for the asking. I devoured them, savoring the adventures they brought to me. When I was in the 4th grade, I started going upstairs to the junior high school library to check out the Black Stallion series. There, I also discovered Jules Verne. I fell in love with his books, filled as they were with not only great adventures, but scientists and engineers who considered the acquisition of knowledge to be the greatest pursuit of mankind. When I finished all the Verne books in the library, I became first in line for any book that arrived written by modern science fiction writers such as Heinlein, Asimov, Van Vogt, Clarke, and Bradbury. I liked them all unless they branched out into fantasy. I didn't care to read about heroes who could read minds or walk through walls or do magic. Those heroes I liked had courage and knew more real stuff than those who opposed them. When the Great Six inspected my library record and found it top-heavy with adventure and science fiction, they prescribed appropriate doses of Steinbeck, Faulkner, and F. Scott Fitzgerald. It seemed as if all through grade school, I was reading 2 books, one for me and one for my teachers. For all the knowledge and pleasure they gave me, the books I read in childhood did not allow me to see myself past Coalwood. Almost all the grown-up Coalwood boys I knew had either joined the military service or gone to work in the mine. I had no idea what the future held in store for me. The only thing I knew for sure was my mother did not see me going into the mine. One time, after Dad tossed her his check, I heard her tell him, "Whatever you make, Homer, it isn't enough." He replied, "It keeps a roof over your head." She looked at the check and then folded it and put it in her apron pocket. "If you'd stop working in that hole," she said, "I'd live under a tree." After Mr. Carter sold out, the company was renamed Olga Coal Company. Mom always called it Miss Olga. If anybody asked her where Dad was, she'd say, "With Miss Olga." She made it sound as if it was his mistress. Mom's family did not share her aversion to coal mining. All of her 4 brothers, Robert, Ken, Charlie, and Joe, were miners, and her sister Mary was the wife of a miner. Despite their father's hideous accident, my father's 2 brothers were also miners. Clarence worked in the Coretta mine across the mountain from Coalwood, and Emmett in the mines around the county. Dad's sister, Benny, married a Coalwood miner, and they lived down there across the creek near the big machine shops. But the fact that all of her family and my father's family were miners did not impress my mother. She had her own opinion, formed perhaps by her independent nature or by her ability to see things as they really were, not as others, including herself, would wish them to be. In the morning, before she began her ritual battle against the dust, my mother could nearly always be found with a cup of coffee at the kitchen table in front of an unfinished mural of a seashore. She had been working on the painting ever since Dad took over the mine and we moved into the captain's house. By the fall of 1957, she had painted in the sand and shells and much of the sky and a couple of seagulls. There was an indication of a palm tree going up too. It was as if she was painting herself another reality. From her seat at the table, she could reflect on her roses and bird feeders through the picture window the company carpenters had installed for her. Per her specifications, it was angled so not a hint of the mine could be seen. I knew, even as a child, that my mother was different from just about everybody in Coalwood. When I was around 3 years old, we were visiting Poppy in the little house up Warrior Mine Hollow, and he took me on his lap. That scared me because he didn't have a lap, just an empty, wrinkled blanket where his legs should have been. I struggled in his thick arms while Mom hovered nervously nearby. "He's just like Homer," I remembered toothless Poppy lisping to Mom while I squirmed. He called to my dad on the other side of the room, "Homer, he's just like you." Mom anxiously took me from Poppy and I clutched hard to her shoulder, my heart beating wildly from an unidentified terror. She carried me out to the front porch, stroking my hair and hushing me. "No, you're not," she crooned, just loud enough so only she and I could hear. "No, you're not." Dad slapped open the screen door and came out on the porch as if to argue with her. Mom turned away from him and I saw his eyes, usually a bright hard blue, soften into liquid blots. I snuggled my face into her neck while Mom continued to rock and hold me, still singing her quietly insensate song, "No, you're not. No, you're not." All through my growing up years, she kept singing it, one way or the other. It was only when I was in high school and began to build my rockets that I finally understood why. Okay, that ends chapter 1. We're so excited to get started on this book. So that already you can see clear descriptions of the setting. We've got the character building. We definitely can see his mother stands out from everybody else. We know his father is a definitely hardcore, dedicated miner, but he can see something his mom sees also. He sees similar things because he does show some giving in to her beliefs. And even though he's a hard worker, he accepts her and loves her. You can tell that. So it's nice to learn about their everyday life, and we're excited to start the next chapter. Thank you.